Squid Game, Episode 1. I know I am extremely late to this party, but better late than never. I've heard nothing but praise coming from people who've seen Squid Game from all aspects of life. People who love horror, people who just love drama, people who love just Netflix shit. And I knew I should have watched this series when it came out. I just never did for whatever reason, but I'm so happy that I'm finally getting to it because Episode 1 blew my mind. Squid Game is created, directed, and written by one guy, Hwang Dong-yuk, and it makes sense that this is one vision because everything in this episode looks so incredibly from one mind. From the dialogue, to the way the camera moves, to the amazing set designs, to everything. And a lot of my favorite projects are from one creative mind. Someone who has complete control over their product. And I'm not saying that this dude had complete control. I don't know. But I do know he created it, directed it, and wrote every single episode. So he has more control than most people, which is cool. This first episode, titled Red Light, Green Light, is cut up into two halves. Almost perfectly, too. The episode's about an hour long, and the first half hour is like one plot line, and then the second half hour is when the story progresses. So in the beginning of this episode, we follow our main character, who is extremely likable in the most unlikable way at first, and that's something that changes drastically as this episode progresses. Something that I absolutely love. I love when a show has great character development from the first episode, because it's very hard for me personally to get into TV shows unless I love the characters. And a lot of TV shows, unfortunately, take their sweet-ass time with that character development. They take their time making you like characters. And by the time a character gets good, my brain often turns off and I'm not interested in the show anymore. But that is absolutely not the case with Squid Game. Our main character is a gambling addict. That's very, very, very clear. He owes money to debt collectors and debt sharks. And he tries to steal his mom's credit card. He is betting on horse races, and even when his debt collectors find him and beat him and threaten to take his kidney and his eye, he still, after already being beaten, asks to borrow more money, which is hilarious. And there's a part of this episode that I love, and it's an example of how the character changes drastically, which I really, really love. In the beginning of this episode, he mentions the fact that he has a daughter, but it's almost like an afterthought that he mentions it, like his gambling addiction is the foremost thing in his life. That's what's occupying his brain. So much so that, again, his daughter is just an afterthought. And then when he asks to borrow the money, he uses that money for a claw machine. And he's trying desperately hard to get a stuffed animal. Of course, as the episode progresses, we find out that he wants to get that stuffed animal so he can give his daughter a present for her birthday, which I thought was sweet, which I thought was cool. Of course, it shouldn't have been that way. He should have just used the money he already had to get something for her instead of losing it all and then needing to borrow more. So that's obviously a character flaw. But it's a character flaw that I think makes for an incredibly compelling main character, because I first interpreted it as his daughter meant almost nothing to him, and then obviously his daughter means the world to him, and that's why he signs up for the Squid Game. I think that's what it's called. I know that show is called Squid Game, but the main games of the show. And I absolutely love his dynamic with his daughter. It's already probably one of my favorite father-daughter dynamics in a show that I've seen, because so many of them are so CW-esque and dramatic, and like, we get it, you're a father who would do anything for your daughter, and we get it, you're a daughter that despises your father but likes them for the most part, or you will learn to after they sacrifice themselves or something like that. But Squid Game, right from the beginning, it seems like their dynamic is realistic. It seems like their dynamic is fun. It seems like it's just something anyone can really relate to. And that's pretty much the first half of this episode. And then the second half of this episode is when it really, really progresses, and when it blew my mind, and it made me feel great personal shame that I hadn't watched this show already. So the dude from Train to Busan shows up, and he offers the main character to play a game with him. And if he wins, each round he wins, he'll give him money, and each round he loses, he owes that guy money. And then he loses, but instead of giving over the money, he alters the deal. And he says every time he loses, he can slap him right in the face. And this is great, because this character is the guy from Train to Busan is a smart man, and he realizes that this guy is willing to give up his body. Well, he already knew that, because he found out, because he does background checks and stuff, that this guy had already forfeited his bodily rights, I think they refer to it as. But he reconfirmed that here. This guy was willing to get slapped in exchange for money. So he knows that this guy is willing to do whatever he needs to do for money, even sacrifice his body. Though he doesn't tell him the extent of which he's going to, he still knows that he's a character that likely won't back out because his drive for money, his need for money to be out of debt outweighs that of course, being slapped. Or so he thinks. He gives him a card and he tells him to call it if he wants to participate in a game that could offer a lot of money. And the main character doesn't really do this at first until he finds out that his daughter is going to move to the United States with her mom and her stepdad. And upon doing so, he gets worried because his mom tells him that she'll learn English, she'll forget all of her Korean, and her father will just become nothing but a stranger to her. And he desperately does not want this because he really is a good father, at least for the most part. His heart is in the right place, even if his actions aren't. So he calls the number and he joins this game. And this is when the show truly begins, because he enters this warehouse, it seems, with over 400 other people all wearing these green jumpsuits. And there's just some mysterious aspect about this that I absolutely love. Like, the costume design in this show is incredible. From the participants to the, like, soldiers, I think they are, or, like, the guards, the ones with, like, the pink outfits and the PlayStation icons on their faces. All the way to this leader guy, whoever he is, who we haven't seen yet, but he speaks English, and we saw his back as he's watching everything unfold on his TVs in front of him. The participants are told that they are going to participate in a game, or a series of 6 games. In each game, the money is going to be increased for the overall prize reward. And they're also told, though, that if you lose a game, you're going to be eliminated. Little did they know that being eliminated meant you're going to be murdered. So there's that. The very first game that they play is the iconic red light, green light. Again, I haven't seen this show, but I knew those words in that order, red light, green light, meant a lot to this show. I'm on social media. I've seen the memes. I've seen people talk about it. Though, despite how often I've heard about this sequence, I still didn't expect it to be as good as it was, as compelling as it was, as thrilling as it truly was, because the characters move, and then if any of them move after the doll freaky ass statue thing turns its head back around and says red light, they get shot. And this sequence is thrilling as fuck. It's one of the most fun scenes I've ever watched in a TV show, and it's one of the most fun scenes I've seen almost ever. I was on the edge of my seat. This show immediately let me know it had stakes, and that's one of the worst things that a show or a movie or any piece of fiction can do, is have lack of stakes, where nothing feels real, where no threat seems to be serious, where you know the main character is just covered in plot armor and he'll never ever ever die. Again, this is just the first episode. The show could do that as I continue, but this first episode does not seem like it. But this episode was everything that I wanted from the pilot of a TV show. It gave me an incredibly compelling main character. It gave me a reason to back him. It gave me a reason to root for him in his conquest to win the Squid Game and win the money and win over his daughter, hopefully, and stuff like that. And that's the most important thing in a show also, is character. You need to like the main character. So many shows have great concepts, but they fail in terms of character work. And this show definitely is not a victim of that. Also, we get some incredibly cool side characters so far. Shit with names, but we have the girl that pickpocketed him. We have this guy that the main character knows. And then we have like this like asshole guy, like every show has, who seems to have some personal vendetta against the girl. And then we have this other guy who saved the main character from tripping near the end of Red Light, Green Light, which was a really cool sequence, and I'm sure he'll end up being a really cool character, because who else would selflessly save a stranger when it could sacrifice their own life? And then we got the old man, who's just funny as fuck. I enjoyed watching him. Every single scene he was in, I loved it. Anyway, that is my very quick thoughts on the very first episode of Squid Game. If you like this, subscribe to the channel or keep up to date with it. Just check our page frequently, because I'll be uploading a video on every single episode moving forward. Unless this bombs. If this video bombs, then I'll probably do like episode 2 through 4 and then 5 through 9, I imagine, as one video. But if this video performs well, I'll do individual videos for each episode. Make sure you check in with the channel for that. Make sure you subscribe. And I will say, I think this show has the potential to already be one of my favorite shows of all time. I had just watched and finished All of Us Are Dead on Netflix, and I absolutely loved it. I loved it a lot. I loved it so much that I needed more K-dramas to watch, more K-horror. That's why I immediately started Squid Game now. And I did not think I would say this going into it, but this show already has the potential to far surpass All of Us Are Dead for me. And I loved All of Us Are Dead. Anyway, thank you for watching. Subscribe to the channel. Do it.